Hello and welcome to this Sing by Sight interview with the marvellous Mary Carewe. Now, for any of you out there who haven't heard of Mary, believe me, you have heard her. She is the voice on numerous TV commercials, backing vocalist for numerous pop artists, also a soloist, fantastic soloist in her own right, singing with orchestras in the UK and all over the world as a soloist, and also a great cabaret performer. And on top of all of that, she's a fantastic educator as well. Delivers brilliant masterclasses for students discussing singing and backing vocal singing and all sorts of elements of performing. Mary, so lovely to see you. How are you?
I am very well, Emer. It's always lovely to see your smiling face.
Oh, right. Listen, I'm going to get in there straight away with the first question. My first question,
okay.
What's your background? How did you start singing?
Okay, well, my background is very musical. My parents were both professional musicians, but in the classical world. My father, conductor, my mum was an amazing classical, not soprano, alto, and she worked with all the big groups in the sort of 50s, early 60s, the Ambrosian Singers, and did lots of work on recordings. I'm finding every now and then, I look at something and realize, my goodness, my mum was on that. So my background is very much in music. However, I was much more into dance when I was a child. And although I had the compulsory piano lessons, and I did actually play the bassoon. I can't say that that was anything I was very good at, but
Mary, I've never heard you on the bassoon, darling. I have to do it next time we meet.
Oh no, I couldn't remember how to do it now. But yes, so music was very much in my background, but I was very much into pop music and dancing around to the music of the day. Or actually, I was a mad ABBA fan. So, things like that was my musical background, and I would sing along with everything. And my mum would tell me I had a voice like a foghorn and to be quiet. So there you go.
Oh, but obviously you carried on singing. Who influenced you actually back in those days then? You said ABBA. Any other artists that really grabbed you and inspired you?
Well, it'll sort of date me, but, I was really into Debbie Harry and Annie Lennox and all that sort of stuff, the sort of, late 70s into the 80s. I really started singing when I went to college. I went to arts ed and did musical theatre. So my parents couldn't hold me back from performing. And although the dance had always been the main thing, I'd realised I was no dancer by the time I was 14 or so. And I heard about this thing called musical theatre. I didn't really know what was coming from a classical music household. And so I went to study musical theatre. And then I had singing lessons. My mum insisted that I should have one-on-one singing lessons, not just group singing lessons, because she had been a classical singer, and so she felt very strongly about it. And that changed my life, really. I started having singing lessons when I was 16, and suddenly I was obsessed with this technique and scales and arpeggios and practicing for 2 hours every day or more after college. And then when I was 17, I started having singing lessons with the very famous Mary Hammond. And so she and I worked together for a long time. And I also met my partner, who I am still with many years later. And he was in the sort of jazz funk scene back in 1980. Jazz funk was the thing. And he was an instrumentalist, a keyboard player. And he didn't listen to ABBA and stuff like that. And I'd never listened to Chick Corea and all that stuff. So it's kind of a whole new world. And he and I started working together, recording stuff, writing songs, and writing and recording using, back then you could use Porter Studios. It was the new
I remember
technology.
Porter Studios.
Absolutely. So you could record yourself and multi-layer your vocals and all that sort of stuff. So I learned, that was a huge influence for me. And musically, it's been everyone from, as I said, ABBA already, and the Beatles was a real big thing. My parents were very into the Beatles, but then, Stevie Wonder and Judy Garland and, Barbara Streisand. I mean, everything,
It must have just felt like the world exploded for you with everyone out there, all the different artists and influences.
It was very, very. It was weird that you sort of grow up in a very musical household, but then you discover there's this enormous world of music about which you know nothing. And of course, it's completely the other way around for a lot of people. They grow up listening to Capital Radio or something, and then suddenly discover Mahler in their 20s or something. I mean, so yes, my background is very musical. However, I really, really should have persevered with my piano lessons. I do regret that hugely now.
You know what? I'm just going to say that is something I hear so many people say. I wish I carried on. And I get it, because practicing the piano can be torture. It really can. And I understand why loads of people go, I'm just not doing it now. That's it. I don't want to do it. So, yeah, Mary, I feel your pain a bit. I understand anyway. Yeah. But how did you then move from college into the music business? What was the kind of progression, really?
Well, it was a mixture of things. On the one hand, me and my partner, we were writing songs. He was very much in the pop music scene. So I was starting to get involved doing work with some of the groups that were around at that time and doing backing vocals and writing our own songs and trying to get to A&R men and, try and promote me or a band or whatever as a solo thing. And on the other hand, at college, I'd learnt with Mary Hammond, and a huge influence for me was Stephen Hill, who you, I think, were interviewing only recently, because Stephen was one of the teachers on the course that I did at Arts Ed. And he obviously is just amazing. And he noticed me, I suppose, could see that I had some skills. And when he started his group, the Stephen Hill Singers, he asked me to be in the choir. So I didn't do quite the very first of his session group things, which was, I think, somewhere in the south of France or something. But the first Friday Night is Music Night, for instance, he ever did, I was in the group. And I learned just everything from the session singing point of view. It was that contact really through Mary Hammond and Stephen Hill that everything really kicked off on the session singing side.
Yeah. And what's been your most exciting session job, would you say? What's been the best one for you to do, would you say?
Oh gosh, that's really difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
There have been a variety of different things, but one that was very exciting for me when I was in my early 20s wasn't strictly a session, but I was booked as a session singer to sing through the score for the musical Follies by Stephen Sondheim in front of Cameron Mackintosh and the various people involved with the production. This was the first West End production of Follies, and in front of Stephen Sondheim and so on and so forth. So that was a pretty amazing thing for me and my friend Don to have to sing every single song, whether it was I'm Still Here, when you're supposed to be an 80-year-old, or the kids up on the roof when they're in their early 20s. So that was an amazing job to do. The other thing that I did, which was pretty amazing considering how big an ABBA fan I am, was, again, I think it was probably almost the last ever workshop of Mamma Mia. Suddenly I got a call asking me if my friend May McKenna, myself and a couple of other singers would just come along to this workshop they'd been doing of this new musical, but it was all ABBA music and there was nothing written down, No,
Oh,
none of the
wow.
backing vocals were written down, and we had to busk all of this in front of Bjorn and Benny.
Oh,
So that was quite extraordinary to do. So those are the sort of things that are really memorable for all sorts of reasons. But otherwise, I mean, being in a studio and you don't know who it's for, and then Eric Clapton walks in, or you know, over the line they say, Michael Jackson would like to say something, you know, thank you for that.
That must be such a buzz.
It is. I mean, you just never know, do you, what you're going to be doing the next day. You go into the studio, sometimes you know what the job is, and sometimes you absolutely don't. So
So how do you prepare then, just as, you know, a little aside to that, how do you personally prepare them for walking into the studio? Because you're dead right. You get the call and somebody says, are you free? And you assume they know what you can do because they called you. So you kind of think, okay, you've called me, you know what I can do. So it must be a job I can do, but still I need to be ready to walk into anything because I don't know who the artist is. I don't know the project or anything. So how do you prepare for that experience, the unknown?
I think you really, obviously, experience of walking into the unknown numerous times is a huge asset. But I will obviously always turn up warmed up, or if I can't because of it being first thing in the morning, and I'll try and get there early and make sure that I'm in that loo warbling away or whatever else you have to do. Certainly, I will. You quite often, it depends, different fixes, or you get an inkling maybe of what sort of thing it might be. Yeah. Certainly, if I know that it's in a particular style, I mean, for instance, when Miriam Stockley first rang me up to ask me to do what turned out to be the first Adiemus recording for Karl Jenkins, she said, well, they're looking for something that sounds kind of tribal and African, and I sort of I didn't really childlike and all this stuff. And so you will do a bit of research and try and find some recordings of the authentic sound, so that you can kind of channel some of that if that really is what they're after. But really, it's about being fresh. It's about being warmed up. And it's about really being ready to concentrate from the moment that you're in that room, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think also a word I would use as well once you're in the room is adaptable. Do you, do you find that as well? You have to be able to respond.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the number of times that you get booked for something and they say they want it to be poppy and young and youthful and all that stuff. And so, sometimes I work as a fixer. So you book singers in order to make sure that they're doing that sound. And then when the session actually happens, suddenly they want everybody to be singing no vibrato and up to top G's or A's, and in a sort of what I would consider to be a little bit more of a churchy manner or something. So you have to make sure that you have versatile singers around you and that you're prepared to be versatile and change the gears. And that's one of the things actually that I did a lot with Mary Hammond when I was a young student, was listening to different singers, listening to different recordings, different eras, and really trying to sort of get the essence of what is it that made something that was recorded in the 1950s, that song, why does it sound different then as opposed to somebody recording it in the 2020s? And it's the stylistic difference and the way, the voice production, the pronunciation of the vowels. There's so many little subtle things. So I've always been someone who likes to prides myself on my versatility and my adaptability. And I think you just have to, as a singer, you have to get your palette. It's like having a huge palette of colours, isn't it? And you have to know that if somebody says they want it breathy, or they want it icy sounding, or they want it spooky, or they use all sorts of words which aren't necessarily terribly your musical. Well, you know what I mean? It's about giving it's an atmosphere. So often music is atmosphere.
I have been asked to sing more Owly before now, which was quite a good one, actually.
Oh, sorry, I've just attacked my phone. Sorry about that. Owly. Oh,
yeah, yes. Yeah. That was quite a good one, actually. Yeah.
More twit to woo.
Yes, yeah. Channeling my wings and everything. Yeah. The sorry, I was just going to ask you as well about, because you've done so much work as a backing vocalist as well. So I was going to ask you about the idea of working in an ensemble, especially a small ensemble, where in one way you're very exposed and you're not meant to be very exposed. So have you got any tips for anyone watching this video, actually, about doing backing vocals, performing backing vocals, maybe?
Yeah, I think that the main thing about being a backing vocalist is being able to suppress your ego, if you like. Now, that doesn't sound very Mary Carewe, I know, but actually, what I mean by that is having the confidence in your voice to know that if you have to make a sound that isn't what you would choose to do normally, you can do it with confidence and blend in. It's about blending in with the other people you're working with. So often people fight against each other. You know, 2 or 3 singers, it sounds like, I'm sure they're not thinking that, but it sounds like, well, who can be the loudest? Yeah. You know, or, I'm on top, so I must be the most important. Or, and those sorts of things. And actually, it was a really, really great thing when I was first working with Miriam Stockley, and we were doing this very unusual and different sound, or trying to create a sound. And I had to really just kind of go into her voice. I had to, it wasn't as if when I could hear myself, I was too loud, because that's something else that somebody told me years ago. If you can hear yourself in a choir, then you're singing too loud. That's not right, really. It's just that it's as if you can really tell that your voices are breathing and moving as one. And when you're doing backing vocals, you have to be so tuned into that lead vocalist so that you can really follow their twists and turns if needs be, or you have to be really tuned into your fellow vocalists so that whatever is going on, the chaos that might be happening around you, you stick together absolutely as a group, as a section, solid as a rock. And if there's a particular sound that one of the other singers makes that the person you're working for goes, oh, I love that sound, you mustn't have this sort of feeling of, oh, well, I don't know why he likes her sound and not mine or something. You have to be you have to work out what's the essence of that sound that my colleague is making that is exciting the artist at this particular time, and how can I support that? And certainly if you're singing in harmony, it's knowing when you are there to really fatten up that chord and make it sound big and exciting, and when you've got to sort of back off, or when you've got to take the lead, and all those. I mean, it's a subtle art, really, but it is hugely about teamwork.
Yeah. Now, obviously, I want to pull the conversation around to sight singing, Mary.
Yeah.
At some point. So, could you tell me how did you learn to sight sing?
Okay, so I had this musical background, and I did learn to play the piano and the bassoon, and at some point I played the flute and the violin as well, if I'm perfectly honest. But
wow,
nothing. I mean, like for a term or something like that. So I grew up reading music, not sight singing, but I grew up understanding and doing my grade 5 theories and my grade 8 theories, and all that sort of stuff that you had to do in order to take your exams in whatever musical instrument I was doing at the time. So when I came to college, and we did start doing a little bit of sight singing as part of our course, as it were, with Stephen Hill, I realised that I was streets ahead of all these other people because I did know what a minim was, and I did know what a crotchet was, and I could work out intervals and all the rest of it. But obviously I hadn't ever practiced. I'd never done sight singing. I'd never had singing lessons where I'd had to sight read for part of my exam, which I think sometimes is part of one of the syllabuses. So it was really, doing it, first of all. The more you do it with other people, the more you learn about it. And I found that for me, the sight singing thing is very much around tonality, the tone, the center, the tonic, as I would call it, the tonic. I'm sure you have another. Well, there are lots of different words for it, but the root.
I will refer to it as the tonic and the keynote. I generally, I generally kind of call it a couple of things because it's called a few names, isn't it? But yeah, the tonic is a strong one I will use. Yeah. Yeah.
And so for me to be able to hear the tonic all times in my head, so that even if we're doing not transposition, but how a piece of music will move through different chords and so on, but always to know where that tonic is, so that then if I'm lost at all, I can kind of work out, I'm supposed to be on the tonic on this note, so I can join it there. So that sounds terribly vague, but I think the fact that I could read music, then my ear was also very good. I was always very good at oral. I mean, that's something else that I am sure you tell your students all the time. Or oral tests, scales and arpeggios. That's the other thing. I mean, again, I know this is part of what you talk about, but if you know what a major scale sounds like and a major arpeggio sounds like, or a minor harmonic minor, melodic minor, then half the time that's all that sight reading is. It's kind of knowing that it's I've got an arpeggio here or a scale coming down here. So I suppose I was, it was just something I grew up with. I am not, though, and have never been one of these wonderful and amazingly talented sight singers who literally can read something first time. I can read, do a run through with a choir, for instance, with a choir. I can sing through and to be pretty accurate. But by the second or third time, then, I will have nailed it. And if there's something I haven't nailed, I'll have been the one in the group going, the altos are struggling with this section. Can you play it to us, please? But I've always, I'm pretty good at sight singing. And, I've certainly been good enough over the years for the work that I've had to do. And certainly all those years that we were doing those recordings with the Stephen Hill Singers and other groups where you're, reading it in the afternoon, performing it live that evening, was an amazing way to hone your skills. And absolutely, like anything, the more you do it, the more you practice it, the better you get at it. There is no shortcut for anything in life. Practice really does make perfect.
Yeah, there really isn't a shortcut for sight singing. Would you say that there is still a need for singers to sight sing?
I would say that it's absolutely there is a need for it. Or even if you wouldn't say there's a need for it, as in, there are lots of singers who get through their lives perfectly well without being able to sight sing. Nonetheless, being able to have that, extra string to your bow, if you're intending to have a professional career, or even if you're not, even if you just want to sort of partake in group singing with friends of yours, or make new friends by going along to choirs and things, it just gives you a little bit of confidence in those situations. But certainly professionally, the bread and butter sessions very often are the ones that where they want a group of singers, even if they want them to sound like young pop singers, they still want them to be able to read music, you know. Just because if you're recording a film or a TV series, there's just not enough time to sort of be sitting down and teaching everybody from square. And if you're going to musical theatre, I would say you would have a much easier time if you read music, because all of those music calls where everybody's just bashing away trying to learn notes, you'll be that step ahead and you'll be able to sort of, well, maybe shine if you want to do that.
Be the person that stands out, really, won't you? And it's kind of all about standing out for the right reasons, you know. And if you've got this skill that, you know, an MD catches and thinks, oh, right, you can do that. I mean, in one of my previous interviews with Misha Bryan, she did mention how she stayed, her name and face and that stayed in the memory of an MD because he knew she could sight sing, so he called her for other work, you know. So
exactly.
Yeah.
No, absolutely, Emer. And you know, I would say that it's a really useful string to someone's bow if they can have it. Doesn't mean, you know, a lot of people when I was around and I was younger and I was working in the pop scene, there was a sort of element of sort of I don't know, reverse elitism, as it were. You know, oh, we don't need to read music, you know, and not, I don't mean that in a sneering way. What I mean is that it was almost like people who read music actually haven't got the music in their body, if you know what I mean. You know, and there is a wonderful skill to be able to pick things up by ear. But if you can pick things up by ear and you can read music, you're a double whammy, you know.
And it's filling your toolbox with enough skills to make you the person that people call, basically, you know. Or again, like you say, it doesn't have to be even a professional thing. If you've got enough skills in your toolbox that you go to a choir performance and you really enjoy it because your ears work, your eyes work, you understand what the director wants, you can blend with the rest of the choir. So it's all these combined skills. Yeah. Do you feel sight singing helps with musicians' overall musicianship?
I would say certainly that understanding how intervals feel and sound inside your, I don't know, if you're asking would it benefit instrumentalists to be able to sight sing, I just think it improves your flexibility. It's a bit like going to the gym, isn't it? You know, it might not be that you might not need that particular exercise if you're going to the gym simply because you want to play tennis, let's say. I don't know, because that's my sport, let's say. But you go to the gym and you sort of think, oh, why do they use that bit of machinery? That's, you know, not really going to help me. But you would find if you do use that bit of machinery, actually it will strengthen another part of your game, if you like. So
that's a fantastic analogy, actually. That's a really good analogy, Mary.
I don't know that I've said it terribly well, but I hope that I kind of know what I mean in my head.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I mean, but I think really also, I mean, your point about other musicians as well, instrumentalists is good, but also I kind of find with singers, the moment they can sight sing and they can understand things like you said about the scale, maybe a harmonic minor scale or the notes of a chord, and they can put into place, they think, okay, so when I'm singing a harmony, this is what I'm doing. And, you know, oh, right, I'm singing that note of that chord, or, oh, at this point, I'm singing a minor pentatonic or something like that. I just feel that this idea of, yes, you can sight sing, but look at everything in pop music related to what you already do and what you already know, and everything spills in and it just combines to create a stronger overall musician.
Absolutely.
You know, this awareness of how music is created and how it's all made up.
No, I agree with you. I did a job, just my last job before lockdown was a big rock concert, and I was working with two amazing backing vocalists, and we had to sort of put new backing vocals to a very well-known piece of music, but it was quite complicated trying to work it out. And while the three of us were trying to work it out by ear together, the fact that I could actually sort of pick out a few notes on the piano and go la la, and help them sort of realize what the intervals were that we were doing. They're perfectly, absolutely amazing singers, totally used to the idea of singing in harmony, but it just made finding our way around it that little bit quicker. And at the end, we were working under time pressure, as you always are. So the end result meant we could actually work together and do something in harmony, whereas perhaps had we not had that time and that bit of an extra layer, we maybe would have ended up having to just sing in unison or just in two part or something like that. So yeah, it helps very much so.
And also now, you mentioned before fixing vocalists for jobs with Voxophonic. Is it helpful if they can sight sing? Is that the feeling you're getting with clients nowadays, that, you know what, maybe that's something, well, you kind of touched on it before when you mentioned about speed. Is that something that, so this skill of sight singing, something that you're kind of looking for?
I would say definitely, because, if I'm booking something for a film session, and you've got to do 15, 20 scores, 20 cues or something in 2-3 hour sessions, we just don't have the time to sit and go through each cue and make sure that everybody's happy and they know what they're doing. Everything is done at such speed that you have to have voices that are incredibly flexible, which we've touched on, but also people who really can read the music at quite some speed. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be, able to read something incredibly complicated, but they do have to be confident that they can find their way around the music, and, they're not going to be endlessly going, oh, I'm sorry, can we do that one again? Because as best will in the world, the most wonderful singers, we haven't got time for that, we just haven't got time for that. And my heart has broken. There have been a couple of jobs where I've had to submit voices and they've loved one or another person, and then they've come back and said, and we need them to be readers. And I've had to go, I'm so sorry, they really loved your voice, but
it's that little extra, isn't it? It's that. So and I was just going to say, actually, touching on film cues, it's such a unique little world, because you and I both know you'll be given music and you're not always given the cue notes into the cue you're going to sing. You're not given chords. You're not given any help, I'm not being funny, we're both pretty good. And sometimes I found myself stood there with my tuning fork thinking, I need to find that note, because I know that before I have to start singing, there's utter chaos in the orchestra and we're expected to come in on this note. So it really is a very specialized world, isn't it? And very demanding world.
Yes, absolutely it is. And, that everybody is given as much help as they can, but again, it's down to time. They haven't got the time to just keep stopping and starting the cue and giving everybody helpful cue notes or something like that. So yes, it is a very specialized skill, and the fact you don't have anything else to refer to. It is just the vocal line. So you have to be very dependent then on your intervals, because actually the one thing that is always, I find, very hard, and if I'm able to ask the composer or the copyist, I will always ask that the singers get given the music with a key signature, because very often in films they do the orchestral sessions and they do all the sessions, they have no key signature. And may it be all well and good. I don't know whether it's all well and good, but it seems to be all well and good for the fiddle players that, there's sharps and flats all over the place. But for us singers, most of the time, if we know the key we're in, when we see a flat or a sharp, your gut instinct is to think it's an accidental. You see. And so film sessions can often, you get cues, and as singers you're having to literally, there's no key signature, so you're having to look at the F sharp to B sharp and think, hang on, wait a minute, what key am I in? What's all this about?
Where's the tonic gone?
Yeah, where is that? And for someone who, you know, who basically works around using my ear and the tonic and so on, you get very good at recognizing, oh look, there's tons of F sharps, nothing much else going on, we must be in G, you know.
Absolutely.
Or you keep listening to it and going, that's the tonic, which one is it? Oh, it must be that. All right, okay. So that's another little quirk of working in a certain part of the music business.
It is. And listen, the one final thing I'm going to touch on actually is the idea of interpreting a vocal part. Now, this is quite important actually, because I find, having taught sight singing for years, you give a singer, especially a lead line. I'm not talking about a backing vocal line now. I'm talking about when you give them a lead line and they literally read the part and you say to them, come on, guys, let's loosen it up now. Let's perform it. And they'll say, yeah, but I've got 4 quarter notes or 4 crotchets written in that bar. And you say, yeah, but if you were performing that song, you wouldn't sing 4 straight notes. You'd give it some life. You'd pull it around. And that ability to read a part, deliver what's written, and then think, okay, now I need to add my performance onto it. Has that ever caught you out? Well, I don't suppose it catches you out now, but is it something you're aware of?
Well, it is to the point where I will almost never, in that case, be reading, or not reading. Of course, I'm reading what there. Sorry, I will never be singing the 4 crotchets. Almost never, unless I can see when I hear the arrangement, unless I can hear that the band's going da da da, da and therefore whatever the word is, for me, whether it's a pop song, whether it's a musical theatre song, whether it's a piece of folk style music, rock music, whatever, it's the lyrics that drive the rhythm. So often there may well be times where the composer has deliberately written a rhythm that isn't speech rhythm. This is in popular music, obviously. I'm talking mostly here. I mean, classical music is a different thing, perhaps. But if somebody's written a song and you're demoing their song for them, they want you to make the lyric come to life. And that will very often mean that they may have written it as 4 crotchets, or they may have written 8 quavers, but actually they want it to be sung in speech rhythm because that's that's the way you deliver it. So yes, I do think that's one of the things that I really noticed actually when I was working in the group and stepping out as the soloist in the group, and there were other people doing the same, and there were some people who were just amazing sight singers, but the first performance, the first rehearsal, was fantastic, but it never changed from there.
Whereas took it at that next level.
Whereas if you're able to read it well, and then you think, oh, actually, hang on, that means something, and I can hear that the strings are doing X and Y, so why don't I give them the space, and then I can come around them, and I think it's and almost always I'm trying to think of any time when sometimes a composer will say, no, actually, I would rather you didn't dot that note, because I would like the emphasis to be on the or the but for some reason, and I'm obviously quite happy to do that. But yes, if you look at it's so obvious, isn't it? When you look, I'm recording an album at the moment, all these classics composers, Gershwin, Kern, and if you look at a song like a Jerome Kern song or something, and you look at it when it's written on the page, and then you think of the numerous different interpretations from Ella or from Nat King Cole or from Frank Sinatra or any number of artists, and there are some things that they will all do the same because it's just couldn't be done any other way. But then they'll all pull the lyric around if they want to tell the story in a slightly different and personal way. So very important.
Brilliant. Oh, listen, Mary, thank you so much for agreeing to chat with me today on Sing for Sing by Sight for Vocal Vista. Thank you so much. What you know is just unbelievable. It's immeasurable, really. Your experience and your talent is fantastic, Mary. And thank you so much for sharing the insights here with me today. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Emer.
Take care till I see you. Bye, Mary.